or was, it may have moved after I left, headquartered at a facility in my home state. This is rare because most of the other wings are within a stone's throw of DC or Nevada. This is mostly based around researching the craft's navigation system. The navigation in every craft is the same. The craft use a system that originally befuddled generations of researchers, but it's essentially a 3D Dijkstra algorithm. It finds points around the craft and chooses the most efficient possible route through space time to get to that point. Pathfinding. Some of the parameters it uses to gauge efficiency are totally unknown to us and are a serious point of contention. It's not autonomy, but rather obstacle avoidance, not unlike what you would see in a self driving car. But the self driving car could go through air, space, and water without worrying about what medium it's in. Additionally, the algo accounts for the craft's place in time. I don't think this means that the craft time travel in the way we think they can, but rather go so fast that they experience dilation and can hit objects in the future and potentially past at their target destination. It's possible they do this on purpose sometimes. I don't know much about the internal programming of the computer or how it actually does any of this. There are a few senior scientists that hold that information dear. One of them jokingly refers to it as IC, as in C for NHI, non human intelligence. I know that he doesn't work with a computer, only a pad of paper and pen. Although the algo is extremely effective, nuclear explosions and experiments somehow interfere with this navigation. Craft particularly avoid Diablo Canyon, which is a nuclear power plant. Even if we put something that they really want there, they mostly avoid previous crash sites as well. More on crashes later. Speaking of avoidance, tracking, like I mentioned, is or was part of NORAD. The NHI deployed craft of various shapes and sizes all the time. I don't want to claim that they have advanced cloaking techniques, but from what I heard, the tracking department basically is an eternal game of cat and mouse. They don't have adequate technology to track the transmedium craft. All I would say on record is NHI, non human intelligence, know we can track them and know how to avoid us. They usually avoid detection by going underwater, especially in the case of particularly large, by human measurement, enormous craft. It's interesting that historical UFO designs mimic the design of buildings and vehicles of that time, period. Whether this was just humans not being able to reference what the designs look like or a form of mimicry is anyone's guess. Someone in leadership knows the answer. I don't. It's important to note that not everyone at NORAD was part of the tracking team, but the tracking team is embedded in NORAD and interfaces with them on a minute to minute basis. This leads to scenarios where NORAD will report an object and the tracking team will silently acknowledge but give no explanation. This led to a catastrophic incident that happened after I left, but knew about from a colleague. Supposedly, tracking is being moved to the Space Force to clear up these miscommunications. If I were working there, I would probably be working on that onboarding process. NORAD was moved to Cheyenne, not only to protect from a foreign adversary, but also because the facility is uniquely equipped to track NHI craft. The wing I call anthropology is the weirdest one by far. It focuses on a few different things. They originally studied non human intelligence intentions and culture, if it's possible to call it that. The reports I read from this early research changed the way I see the world. Anthropology and computer science were at one point decompartmentalized to study how non human intelligence interact with the craft. The non human intelligence are linked to their craft in a way that borders on biological. The actual way they interface with the components of the craft is not as sophisticated. Take this video. Although it's an immature video, the way he interfaces with a piston that moves the gas pedal is similar, albeit much simpler than the way non human intelligence interacts with their craft. I did look at the link to the video, and it is a man who is using brain waves to drive a car, to turn lights on and off by just thinking about it. Very interesting. They send signals using their body to systems that control the craft. It's hypothesized that they can and prefer to control craft remotely, but I'm not sure if we were really researching this. Take note that if the driver of the jerry rigged death trap in the video panics, and we're talking about the video, you know, and when I run this on leakyou.com, I'm actually going to show the video because it does provide some depth. If the driver was to panic, then the car would accelerate due to heightened brain activity because those brain waves. When people wonder how a super intelligent being can crash, this is part of the answer in conjunction with the navigation system malfunctioning. I personally don't think that non human intelligence feels stress as we do, but if they heightened their activity and overrode the pathfinding system instead of letting it do its job, there could be an accident. A smaller subset of this wing focuses on how humans can interface with craft that are currently in the sky. If you see an image of a large disk above a gas station in the snow, it was someone in this department summoning a craft, not unlike how cheap RC car controllers can interfere with each other even when used at the same time. Some people are better suited to interfere with NHI craft than others. We're not sure why. On somewhat of a comedic note, one colleague was harshly punished for using this research to encounter a non human intelligence craft at a party. There was an outdoor bonfire, alcohol, and questions about what she did for work. She wasn't killed or anything, just called a dumbass and told to never ever do that again. So the ability to summon a craft using a frequency that's similar to how cheap RC car controllers work. Some people in this department are BYU graduates who believe they are directly interfacing with what were recorded in the Bible as angels. There is an even smaller subset of this wing that focused on non human intelligences communicating with humans. All I know about them is that they did that work at some juncture, but probably have other jobs now. Crash recovery probably has the most people involved. It's split up among several patient orgs, but funding is funneled away from it and into other departments where there's little activity. This is common among the entire agency as funding and staff get balanced between the different wings based on progress or lack thereof. Most of the crash recovery staff are staff from tracking and security that are involved in crash recovery. It's also made up of members of all of our favorite three-letter organizations. Crash Recovery's overall structure was referred to as a volunteer fire department. It's typically some people playing pool and watching movies, but when the need arises, all hands on deck from the current staff and on call members. Crashes are exceedingly rare. The number of crashes goes down exponentially because they learn to avoid the cause of the crash. When they crash, they make no effort to retrieve the debris, save for one instance. I personally believe some crashes weren't crashes, but were non human intelligences parking a vehicle for us because there were no bodies recovered and the craft was in perfect shape. Security, to put it mildly, are terrifying. Imagine the very best of the SEALs, NSA, and Secret Service all working together. They are short staffed, but that staff is not only elite, but dedicated. Their numero uno rule is people that mention the agency name are killed. It's not a question, and it happened during my time. You'll hear more about them as news about the retaliation Dave comes out. I wasn't directly interviewed by him, but I know several people who were. The security team figured it out quickly, and you could say they aren't his fans. They constantly monitor all discussions about the topic, but rarely act in real life unless absolutely necessary. They staff facilities like the second one I worked at. This team also actively engages in disinformation, gaslighting, and other similar campaigns. Their goal is to keep the United States secrets about this tech secret because other countries are so close to breakthroughs. They also conduct counter intel on what other countries know and counter intel about what they know about what we know. Not to sound crazy, but the security team will see this at some point or another. So, a friendly hello to them. Can't touch this. I sure hope. I have a hunch that the current public facing task forces are actually their own wing within security. A friend of mine texted me once, Sean Kirkpatrick, you can get your ass kicked. Ha. Don't confuse these public facing task forces with the work Dave and company are doing. Dave is the real deal. I should mention that leadership is kind of its own wing. It's not on paper, but they operate above all of the other departments. Leadership is made up of managers who pay close attention to each wing. They discuss info they know and bring up contradictions to upper managers. I don't know how far this chain goes up. I reported to someone who reported to someone. I believe it goes higher than that. I have no idea who is at the top or what their credentials are. I suspect they're in the private sector with their bankroll disguised as R&D for government contracts. Leadership honestly made the right choices with the information they had, at least when I was there. Some bad people started to get in charge and changed the way things worked among the middle managers and individual teams. This pissed people off and led to multiple catastrophes. As far as I know, they faced no discipline. So that was exhaustive. Those are the wings of the agency that I knew about during my time there. It feels good to get this off my chest. I've been sort of keeping up to date on the topic's coverage in mainstream media and want to give some of my thoughts on this. If the United States comes out directly and says, we have craft, we have bodies, it means we are on the verge of a serious global conflict like we've never seen before. They will only reveal this to the public if absolutely necessary. The way this information is going to come out is through people like Dave and further probing from Congress. Not all of it should be public information, but I believe the technology that is just sitting somewhere would completely revolutionize the way we live. I don't think anything significant will happen in my lifetime. It was a frustrating job because everything was so stagnant and had so much potential. We're talking about technology so advanced it could render every single current global issue obsolete. If we solve two major issues with the craft and we're able to manufacture them, we wouldn't know what to do with ourselves. The technology being incorporated into our technical revolution is a hoax. I heard one theory from a guy at a bar that the transistors at Bell Labs were inspired by technology at Area 51. This is a joke. The technology makes transistors look like sticks and stones. I believe multiple species of non human intelligence is misinformation spun up by the security team. There are mystery wings of the agency I didn't get to learn about during my time. It's possible one of these researches other species, but I doubt that. Non human intelligence potentially experiment on us and definitely experiment on animals. We have no idea why. The main reason you'll never see organized disclosure is because nobody can agree on what to say. We simply don't know enough, namely, the non human intelligence's intentions. Sort of. We have a good theory. And where they're from. The anthropology wing believes that the non human intelligence are controlled by an intelligence that is beyond our current understanding of how life works. The biology reports conflict with this, which is why things can't be compartmentalized. If the government were to disclose info, they'd have to get the story straight. We also have no idea where they are from. We, as in everyone I worked with, it's possible someone in high up leadership knows. I don't think the answer is as simple as another planet or caves on Earth. The reason why specific facility locations are kept from the public is because some of them are sensitive and also not entirely NHI researched based. It would be possible for some TikTokers and hippies to storm the first office I worked at if they were careful. Every place where the agency works is also home to other operations, which is why it's so hard to identify where they are. Lower leadership is headquartered in DC, and the upper management is split between Nevada, Australia, and another foreign country. Security are everywhere and potentially even work remotely without an HQ. I was contacted by a documentary filmmaker when some of my friends were, but I turned it down due to my specific involvement and how easy it would be to track me down if I gave particularly juicy info. I believe the story will come out soon. I no longer work in the field and I teach full time. After a quick proofread, that's my post. I'm not tuned into discussions other than what major outlets have to say, but I hope some of my information is interesting. It felt good to type, even if my post doesn't get accepted. I feel tempted to sign off with my first name, how I always do in emails, but I have a feeling that would end badly. I'm currently on a camping trip with my family, but I'll be around to answer questions at various times. Please don't DM me anything too weird. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk. I've never done anything like this before. I'm sorry I couldn't provide information that proves who I am. I like not being paralyzed or dead. I'm sure you'll see others make the same claims in due time. Edit. Well, this is a lot. I checked on my post earlier this morning and didn't see anything. Try to respond to what I can. I'm recovering from a back injury and will be up for a while. All right. So I know that, is a very, very long post, a very long Reddit post, but it is quite fascinating. And what I'm going to do is we're now going to start on the 4chan post, but I won't be able to finish it by the end of the stream. So I'm going to have to push this back to a part 2, but I'm okay with that. So we'll finish this up tomorrow, but I am going to give you um, a preview of what to expect. All right. So let me share this. Now, again, you take this information for what you will. These were posts that were posted again on Reddit and 4chan. But again, These places, Reddit and 4chan, are places on the web where you can post anonymously, and that there are a lot of people with, I would say, like, more open minds in these places. It's not too many places on the web where you have the ability to post anonymously. Now, let's start off with this 4chan post. This was posted um, again on the UFO knowledge 4chan thread, and the OP was anonymous. All right. I have intimate knowledge of what the US currently knows about UFOs, minus the last 2 years. UFOs are primarily unmanned drones. UFOs are built to spec each time they are deployed. Now, listen, as I read through this, I want you to compare what you're hearing to what we just read from the other OP, right? Just keep that in mind. UFOs are created by a mobile construction facility that hides in the ocean. Construction facilities destroy anything that comes close to it and will disappear for days when approached aggressively. A mobile construction facility. And he does go into more detail on this. Uh, U.S. believes the facility has been active on Earth for at least 100 years or much longer. Fire away on questions. I'll answer what I can. You won't be disappointed. Okay. So we continue here. Right. So let's start with the questions and answers. Is there a working theory on the origins? If so, care to elaborate? Quite a bit. But we think the construction facility has been around since at least 4000 BC. See sightings, paintings from the early eras of history. Has any form of intelligible communication been established? Yes. It also depends on your viewpoint. They mostly want very little to do with us until we start to talk about war and nuclear options. It's one of the reasons why you see them so often at critical events. That's not the first time we've heard that. Do they know who or what is creating these craft? Yes. As mentioned earlier, the Mobile Construction Unit is responsible for their deployment and construction. Any potential that they are made by a higher branch of the U.S. government? Absolutely not. What allows them to fly so fast? What technology? Gravity manipulation and the materials they are constructed from. We think the construction unit is driven by AI. The response time to threats is almost instant and usually very calculated and well thought out. You all should pay attention to this. The majority of UFOs, as I mentioned previously, are built to spec and purpose. This is why they are always different sizes. The contents and equipment usually mimic the intended purpose, too. Is it related to is it related to that one under rock in that one Scandinavian country, the one that deploys within tectonic spaces? No. This one almost never leaves the Bermuda Triangle. Bullshit. Governments have and have had for a while advanced anti-gravity crafts. You asked if the particular UFOs we study are the result of a foreign government, not if other governments have shittier versions. Speed alone tells us what we are looking at. Do the UAPs return back to the manufacturing unit? This is that mobile manufacturing unit in the Bermuda Triangle. Yes, some come in and leave the planet, but very rarely. Usually the same number that comes in goes out, unless special circumstances arise. It feels more like a carrier, but with construction capability. What are the purposes of the UAPs? Surveillance of humans? The United States believes they are not here to harm us. They only seem interested in us once they realize we are destroying things around us, including each other. One of the officials in charge said something that stuck with me. Quote, "They act like keepers of a zoo, uninterested in the daily life of wildlife until there's a problem." I can approach that facility without being attacked? LOL. The last unit we saw approach the facility didn't even have time to communicate they were being attacked before it was over. And he or she goes into more detail later on about that experience. All right. Next question. What's buried under the mesa on Skinwalker Ranch? Is that show even legitimate? It seems like some of the most legitimate research on anything paranormal that I've seen in my life, and I'm very curious about what they seem to be finding. Response: no idea that the project, if any, is likely kept separate. There were two rare elements found fused together that were under the mesa, and I'm very curious what's going on there. Answer: no idea about that either. The crafts we recover are built with numerous elements. Some aren't even obtainable here. Um, I'm going to skip that one because obviously it's. Now, are they friends? They cut their losses when crashes are recovered. Same with personnel. Zookeepers aren't friends with the animals. Do you know if the entities behind the UFOs are native to the Earth, like an older civilization, breakaway civilization, or a civilization of humans that escaped a previous cycle of cataclysm due to their advanced tech? Limited expertise, since my role is more craft analysis, and you can tell by this person's post that they were in the crash recovery area. And when we look at the way that they compartmentalize and break this up, especially when we pay attention to how the previous post wrote up about the different wings, it's obvious that, people in crash recovery don't talk to people in biology, who don't talk to people who are studying the culture of these things, et cetera, et cetera. So just wanted to note that. But limited expertise, since my role is more craft analysis. U.S. believes they are foreign to our world. A previous cataclysm could make sense. They also show up in times of strife, such as natural events. Also, I think that other guy who was talking about approaching the area without being attacked is a remote viewer. Answer: I lurked on other boards, but haven't really been to this one since I was comfortable with the answers I had. I wasn't aware that was a thing on here. There were rumors about my coworkers that they had psionic abilities, but honestly, it rarely comes up in a conversation. Give it a shot. Have you tried sending in a raft of hippies? The AI may not recognize them as a threat. Just kidding. Based on previous disappearances and acts of hostility, we believe the construction facility carrier has learned what is and isn't hostile. Usually, it will just move away or stay deep under the water. It doesn't fire on civilian boats, for example. Exceptions apply. We have seen one or two go missing, usually after sharp turns, etc. Any relation to Antarctica? My section monitored just this craft and any interactions it attempted. A previous coworker did mention something in passing of Antarctica at one point, but I ignored it, if I'm being honest. Talking about other projects is considered career suicide. How about the destination of the space orbs? Is Jupiter a potential destination? I believe they are keeping a massive orb inside of the gas giant, though I have no evidence, but many dreams of it. No idea. If it is a project, I haven't seen it, No orbs out of the construction facility, just UFOs. What units have been lost approaching this construction machine? Why have they not sent a sea wolf to investigate? The Jimmy Carter with its nanotech. Answer: everything you can think of, really. At one point, nuclear missiles were being toyed with again, and we deployed fighters and a sub with serious intent. Everything except the sub was lost. How have they come to the conclusion the UAP being released are ET? If they don't know what the UAP are to begin with, or if there is nothing inside them, it's a pretty big jump to go right to ET. Answer: they crash sometimes. Parts fail, and gravity engines near the surface of the planet can be like crossing an intersection. We recover these and sometimes find passengers. We mostly see drones now. Back in the earlier days, we saw a lot more piloted craft. Why do you not know anything about the last 2 years? Just curious. Moved on from the project because of new management that didn't trust older, proven methods. Also, the last unit we saw approach the facility didn't even have time to communicate they were being attacked before it was over. Any details on what happened? Answer: normal approach details. Pilot responsive and actively talking. The feed cuts out. Pilot still talking. Suddenly, nothing. Poor guy likely had no idea it was a suicide mission. Based on what we've seen, the construction facility has far superior weapons than the UFOs do. This weapon destroys matter it hits entirely. It also shits on anything electronic in the vicinity. The contents and equipment usually mimic the intended purpose too, like the equipment share a pattern specific to its purpose. Answer: yes. Usually when we find a thinner model, for example, it would have no pilot and a lot of sensory hardware. My favorite is finding one that is fitted for research. If we are lucky, we find things that we've never seen before. Before I left, we were looking at what we thought was a lab of some kind for genetics. Are you talking about a craft shaped like a pear or a burger? Be more specific. Disregard, it's the burger ones, isn't it? Answer: size, shape, and speed are usually the factors we use to determine what the purpose of the UFO is. We get it wrong sometimes. They can be quite large, and both pear and burger shapes are known builds. Is this the burger-shaped ones or the pear-shaped one? Answer: both. Next question. I've had 2 orange orbs approach me to within 100 feet one night, glowing, translucent, but rather dim, like the setting sun seen through smog. They were flying in 45-degree formation, above 50 miles per hour. Answer: research science vessels sometimes have mobile light producing cameras used for multiple purposes, from scouting to keeping threats contained or at bay. These are shaped like hammers and, when operated, are extremely bright. Red lights are a sign of hostility or caution to deploy weapons. Orange lights are usually for spotting minerals or living things. As soon as I blinked my flashlight at them, this was a continuation of the question, they accelerated to several thousand knots and disappeared over the horizon. Searched YouTube and found several videos of the same objects, mostly near San Diego. Answer: I'm not surprised. The range on those is quite large. The UFO was likely somewhere above you, quite high up. Question: is the underwater base near Catalina Island creating these? Answer: no. This one has only left the Atlantic Ocean twice. Both times were before I arrived. Question: are aliens human or humanoid? Answer: humanoid. Very humanoid. Question: then do you know anything about abductions, forced breeding programs, etc.? Answer: bodies are removed before we are allowed to perform work. We definitely see some passing by hints, changes in older proven methods by new management. And what he or she is basically saying there is with and he or she's going to continue to break this compartmentalization down. But they have people that recover the craft, but there are different team that will recover the body, for example. And even when they're doing the recoveries of the craft, these teams do certain tasks, but they aren't allowed to know the tasks of what the other teams are doing. So keep that in mind. Question continues. Also, real true disclosure anytime soon? Answer. The Air Force is extremely frustrated with the lack of progress on their end. We felt similar, but are unable to share details with them. All right, next question. So I'd assume this was sort of an AI design that seems to be advanced yet already prepared for the get-go. Answer. Can you rephrase this? Basically, when designed to, let's say, be a miner, you will usually see hardware dedicated to resource collection on the vessel. If the vessel is something scientific, you may encounter things like tools, and as previously mentioned, something akin to a lab. We thought of it more as I need to go hiking, so the construction facility builds you a car, UFO, and packs it full of hiking supplies and even adjusts the shape to fit what was packed. Question. Do you think there are fewer piloted crafts because the population of the facility, if any, is declining? Answer. No. The common consensus is that they are just being careful. I've heard recovery of living pilots usually doesn't go well for either of us. We suspect they piloted a lot of initial craft due to early complications. We also saw more crashes. Question. Any bodies recovered show any ranges of aging we can recognize? I wonder if most of the inhabitants are either old or dead at this point, though younger bodies would disprove that, I suppose. Answer. No idea about age. Not my specialty. And asking about it would have been a net negative, especially now. Previous higher ups were getting better about being open with information since discovery happened quicker. Question. What do the passengers look like? Are they biological and or android? Answer. Bio, meaning biological. Question. Do you know anything about people such as Stephen Greer, Lou Elizondo, or whatever, etc.? Are these people in the know or LARPers or controlled misinfo, etc.? Answer. No idea. One name sticks out you didn't mention. Mentioning Bob Lazar by name would likely have you taken out back and put down like a dog. Do the math on why. Question. Out of everything ever found regarding UFOs in general, what is your personal favorite? Answer. New engine was deployed with a very large model that I had never seen before. We usually see 3 to 5 gravity-producing engines. This one had 7. Favorite object or find? Probably the lab, since we never fully understood how it worked before it was destroyed. Question. Makes me wonder whether a meaningful distinction between scientific study and amusement still exists for them if it ever did. Answer. This was before my time, but they talked about a bus UFO that had more occupants than hardware. Most of the intended purpose appeared to be for physical viewing. I wondered if they ever just wanted to look at the animals. Question. How long until we can hang with aliens? Answer. Have any retarded cousins that destroy everything they touch? When do you want to see them again? Question. This is a strangely reoccurrent theme. At a minimum, they have psychotronic devices of some sort. Answer. This reminded me of something in my first year. UFO crashes, they remove the bodies well before my team arrives. We start to look and the craft is unpowered at first. A few minutes later, the craft powers on and starts to close up. We radio out and get a response from the unit removing one of the occupants, alien, that they're working on it. The ship powers off, and the other team asks if we are good to go. No mention of how access was possible. I suspect the pilot may have interfaced with the ship by remote or psionic ability. Question. Not really translucent, but maybe the outer shell was. They definitely had an inner core that wasn't see through. The answer on this one is lots of tools they use produce light. If this is still about the orb, the shell you may have seen was just the light around the device I called the hammer. All right. Are there more than one construction facility? You mentioned one in the Bermuda Triangle. However, there are a lot of USOs off of the west coast of the Americas as well. Any insight? Answer. I suspect there may be since we only watch the Atlantic Ocean, and the UFOs we track normally don't stray far from home base. Asking about it would have been a bad move. So, even what we're seeing here in this answer is that even the oceans that are being monitored are being done by different teams. And that is, in effect, that compartmentalization that we've heard so much about. The question goes on. I'm talking about the MCUs. Are you talking about the one in the Pacific or the Arctic? Atlantic. I don't know of others. The mention of something in the Arctic was weird and brief when it came up. Is the MCU you are talking about a burger shape or a pear shape? Need to know. Answer burgerish. I misunderstood and thought you meant the UFOs, not the carrier construction facility. And here's the next question. OP, talk about hybridization of the human race. Pro tip, you're a shill or UI. If you only knew how bad things are. Answer, I wouldn't. FUCK, my retarded cousin, but I also understand I'm on 4Chan. Next question. I read somewhere some UFO navigation systems require an ET whose own personal wavelength has been specifically tuned to the neural network of the craft. Answer, this tracks for me. When we look at the craft, we usually have to force certain things to work. Two teams come behind mine, so that could be dedicated to understanding of the craft. Can you tell us what they look like physically? Usual gray type or big ears? Answer, imagine the typical grays you see on TV. I have seen two corpses, so maybe there are different species, but I've never laid eyes on another. Anything about their culture, name, etc.? Rumors mostly. They almost never want anything to do with us. Mentions of destruction or warfare apparently change their attitude pretty quickly. Question goes on. Precisely. Another massive problem is determining which aspect of encounters is physically real. And the answer, we rely on our biological and technological sensors too much to be able to truly understand the phenomenon, in my opinion. Question, that's a hell of a claim. Any particular incident? I assume you're referring to the various nuclear site incursions. Answer, I guess global conflict wasn't a good term, LOL. I meant more of tension. The nuclear site incursions, the airspace violations has also been increasing tensions. From what I understand, the Roswell incident increased tension between US and Soviets. There's security tensions behind other countries gaining access to information or materials surrounding the phenomenon. There has been great domestic tension within the US, intel agencies, military, disinformation campaigns, etc. All right. It goes on to say, why did the UFOs, FUCK, up all those people in Brazil? Sauce question might let me give you more insight. Next question. Was it by accident of them not knowing we'd be damaged by their equipment, or do they not care? Answer. If found, they usually monitor us. If approached at an uncomfortable distance, they flee. When cornered, it doesn't end well. Their tools can do harm to us, even for just scientific purposes. We think they just don't care. Question: do you believe we are under their control in some way or were sometime in history? Answer: possibly, but I have no way of knowing. The higher ups I worked for seemed hell bent on discovering more about them, usually not a quality found among controlled means. Question: what were the main reasons for the crashes? I'd think random lightning or freak accidents, seeing how advanced they are. Answer: you'd be surprised how many mistakes they make, especially the further back you look. One area they seem to avoid like the plague, we suspect, is due to issues with gravity and flight. Before they figured it out, we collected quite a few mishaps there. They've tried to shoot some down, mostly over nuclear incidents, but failed miserably. Question: did you see written symbols in the craft? Answer: yes, usually marked by doorways and key objects. Written language appears frequently on tools and critical items. Also, it reads like their objective is to observe and preserve. Answer: I agree. The idea was pitched that they are waiting for us to mature or perhaps something bigger to arrive, and they don't want us to ruin the planet in the meantime. Question: what do you believe to be the reason for the uptick in sightings? Answer: once again, my knowledge was cut off about 2 years ago. If you mean very recently, my guess would be the Russians in the US having a little secret dance amongst themselves. When nuclear anything gets involved, we see large deployments for long periods of time. Strife seems to be the catalyst. Question: also, what is your scariest experience while engaging with the phenomenon? What was your favorite, if any? Answer: doors closing on us, as mentioned above, made me wish I had brown pants. Still fascinated with the lab we found. It was damaged by accident, and I never really got much time with it. Question: are you aware of any foreign IA tech that was successfully reverse engineered? Answer: yes. We used to laugh at Russian and Chinese designs. We stopped laughing at China when they produced an operational but buggy version of their mining equipment. Still stumps most of our engineers. China also lies out of its ass, but from what we saw, we deemed it operational and working. Countries listed above have flight capable craft, just not very good ones. I'm honestly surprised no one has asked about the energy source or internals. Heading out for the night, but we'll be on tomorrow to answer more. Next question is just why. Now, if I was on 4chan, I'd be able to see back, the other related questions as to that, but that's okay. Let's just keep going. Why is the question answer? One example was shortly after I joined. They said one was downed, but two occupants were alive. The first team couldn't get close without being attacked. Aliens never seemed to recover their lost UFOs for whatever reason, so they just waited a few days until they died, then recovered the UFO. Hostility is usually their last option. Um, Next isn't, and he goes on to say, I'm genuinely confused about what you're asking me. Recruitment isn't something easy if that's your goal. They usually recruit people with extremely clean background checks, and I never saw anyone under 35. What is the energy source? You mentioned Bob, so I think I know already. Answer: correctish. The power source is E115. The thing no one talks about is that usually they seal it within the craft because it produces its own gravity field. Bob Lazar handled element 115, which was already pulled out, which is rare and weird. Protocol now is that only one person is allowed to handle element 115. I was forbidden from touching or interacting with it. We still have trouble producing it as well. And just so you know, Bob Lazar did a really interesting video or uh, demonstration of element 115, down to how it's manufactured and down to how it's used in the craft to produce this antimatter, anti-gravity that is used to power these craft. So, it's in some of my previous videos, but let's continue. Question: how do UFOs travel? In the context of those Tic Tac reports and Bob Lazar's report video, where they seemingly jump through space, time, and light to appear in a new location, notice how it just phases to a new location like staggers? Answer: this is common when moving at high speed from a standstill or slow speed initially. Gravity distorts time, and the object inside the field can stagger when traveling. Question: I've heard the craft can detect the presence of a camera and when someone is filming them. Answer: not unless the craft is put into a mode to detect a lens. No. If the UFO is standing still or hovering, though, they won't miss you. You can see a face like you're standing in front of someone a couple of miles out. Doesn't look like a camera through their eyes, though their eyes are different. Now, here was a very interesting question, and I think many had this, was how are you able to talk about this? Didn't you swear to secrecy? Answer: yes. Liver cancer sucks. Question: wouldn't the government already have their eye on you considering you could turn out to be a loose end? Answer: I'm not going on national TV or radio. I'm on a 4Chan board. I'm sure they look at stuff like this, but cancer makes you feel a little different. Also, did you or your coworkers experience strange things outside of work that could have been related to what you saw? Answer: no. Usually, most people working there had no prior interest in UFOs, or at least feigned not having interest. And we continue on. Let's see here. Next one here. Not true. Most zookeepers love their work and love the animals a great deal. His answer to this was, I've wondered if some of them do like us. They definitely have the ability to destroy us. The spheres are a type of unmanned surveillance drone shaped like a hammer. But when activated, yes, they appear like spheres due to the intense light. They see light differently, and looking into the sun for them isn't an issue like it is for us. I can't speak for the psionic abilities, if any, since I've only heard rumors in passing. We believed the lack of communication was inherent to their personal beliefs about us. As mentioned previously, but active, serious discussion about destruction gets them going. Question: do you think they're playing some role in stopping rogue entities and dangers from space hurting us on a large scale? Answer: that was another theory, yes. We think they are more interested in keeping the planet safe from us. Two main suggestions are that we don't spoil the planet before they arrive and take it from us, or they are letting us evolve and grow while preventing devastation. Question: what do you know about this claim? Answer: sadly, not enough to give you a good response. Remote viewing is a very strange thing. It's shown to work at times, but most of the time it doesn't, or the conclusions have fuzzy connections as if forced. As for the interdimensional aspect of it, I don't believe there's anything actually interdimensionally happening. It's just our best way to try and grasp, perceive what's going on behind the veil. From what I understand, whatever is behind the phenomenon has the ability to manipulate matter, energy, in similar ways that we can manipulate information. We can create 3D realities and manipulate them via our understanding of machine code and linear algebra. It also seems to be able to play around with space-time, almost as if we are sitting on or perceiving time that's been homogeneously transformed into projective space, while they are free to move about homogeneous space. If they haven't entered the projection space, then they could freely move about our space without interacting with it until they collapse their space/coordinates into our projective space, thus normalizing their position with their homogeneous coordinate. Question: why does image analysis by someone competent on the original UFO always show weird stuff? Answer: gravity and the reflective nature of the craft, usually. Let's go to the next question here. What materials are these UFOs made of? Answer: that answer gets complicated quickly. Short answer is an alloy that we cannot reproduce but only repurpose. This alloy is kind of like a film that fits over the frame of the craft. I mentioned they were built to spec. That's exactly what I mean. The shape is always efficiently designed. The actual frame itself is heavier and composed of more elements. Both of these alloys have a lot of elements we cannot reproduce. One of the main problems when repurposing these alloys is getting them hot enough. They absorb heat very well, and shaping the metal is a tedious process. Question: can you quickly walk through the process of identifying the contents of a crashed UFO craft? Answer: first team leaves that deals with occupants and initial discovery. We arrive and meet with an external member of the team who can touch and examine parts we are not allowed to interact with. We never have to cut our way into the UFO. We enter. The first order of business is checking for element 115, then leaving the ship together to send it away. We return and look for any tools and loose objects that can be extracted. We then start to strip any specialized components on board, such as sensory equipment or navigation. We leave, and a third and fourth team arrive, likely to remove the bulk of the craft. Question: tell me about the mobile construction facility making them. Answer: shaped like an extremely large UFO, but as one mentioned, more of a burger design. Almost never leaves the Atlantic Ocean. In fact, it will sit through hurricanes and only move elsewhere to release or receive a UFO. No visible weapons or cockpit from satellite footage. It also does not use any lights, unlike other UFOs. The continuation of the question: are there no other things making UFOs? Answer: yes, UFOs arrive and depart Earth, but very infrequently. These UFOs are usually quite large. The U.S. has been itching to get its hands on a freighter UFO when inbound or outbound, but the chance has never presented itself. Leadership openly stated securing one would result in promotion. Question: that makes sense for the ones like in the military videos, but what about the saucers with multicolored lights? I highly doubt those are drones or military except for the triangle kind. Answer: never seen a triangle UFO. Lights are usually on bigger vessels and are sensory in nature. They are also used to spot each other. Additional question here: people you wouldn't trust to work on your car engine claim they are the go-to guy for examining UFOs. This seems very unlikely. Answer: I'm not here to convince anyone. You'll notice yourself coming back to things I've said over time on your own as understanding increases. Pay attention to the Space Force. We were told this would be a long project. Disinformation was one of the key takeaways. New management was hell-bent on going back to secrecy. They thought we were way too open with our operation. Sounds like OP's ship is the later form. I would not be surprised if the pilots are in sentient craft. Answer: no, they are remotely controlled or directly controlled. Question: the zookeeper analogy is strange. Agree with another here that most zookeepers like their jobs and care about the animals. They display high levels of empathy. Answer: some of the tools designed for abduction would make you rethink this. A lot of them cause pain or harm. A common tool we find is one that seems to scramble coherent thoughts and make the subject childlike. The best way I can describe its use is like forcing a stroke without actually having one. It makes you delirious, but also childlike for a few hours. Question: are these beings incapable of empathy? Do they have emotions? I assume they must have learned something from the recovered bodies. Answer: never interacted with them, only heard information passed along. They can be upset, though, with previously mentioned topics. They definitely have emotion. Are they from off world and true ETs? Answer: the US and leadership were adamant they were off world. Question: why the cloak and dagger? Answer: you're asking the same questions leadership struggled with. We were not entirely sure. Question: if the Air Force is confused, like you say, why is it the only agency we know of that is not cooperating with Congress is Arrow? Answer: you might get a laugh out of this. The USAF is kept in the dark. We operated above them. A close coworker wondered if even the president knew, namely Trump, because we both thought he would just tell everyone. Question: any idea what they might be waiting for? Answer: personally, I think they just want us to grow and become sentient. UFOs arrive all the time and dock with the mobile construction unit. The way I see it, travel time is quite fast. If something was coming to destroy us, it would have arrived already. Question: finding out the truth made them cry in fear for the lives their offspring will live. Answer: I've always suspected my department was under a much higher one with more information. I can't speak to any horrors or worries since none were mentioned unless we were pitching theories. As I stated above, I think a lot of U.S. top brass don't even know about it. I heard the phrase fuck Bill Clinton thrown around regarding access to information. I'm pretty sure he asked, if I'm not mistaken. Question: are they human looking or do they resemble something else? Is it something we've seen written about in UFO topics or pop culture? Answer: they are smaller than humans and look like your typical gray aliens you see. Holes for ears, and they can look at very bright objects without being blinded. I've never seen one move their mouth, but I've also never interacted with one. Let's see here. I'm just continuing down here. Bear with me. Now, there's a question here besides Russians. Do any Europors have data or programs researching this as well? Answer: they are mostly in the dark and probably on the same level as the USAF. And what this person stated previously, again, is that they're operating above USAF. They are operating above the Aero office. Okay. So that goes to a lot of what's been said about the Aero office. Okay. All right, question. Did you hear anything related to a U.S. secret space program? Not that I put any credibility into the words of Corey Good, but Gary McKinnon claimed to see files describing off world personnel and ship names that did not exist. Answer: yes. The U.S. wants to be able to leave the solar system with their craft and explore. They were working tongue in cheek with the Russians before I left. I'm sure the invasion of Ukraine put a stop to that rather quickly. Question: do all nations coordinate their efforts studying this Bermuda Triangle factory, or is each doing their own thing? Answer: each of them do their own thing. The United States is greedy, pretty greedy with what it finds. We will usually extract information, but never offer any in return. Question: what is the mining tool China has supposedly reverse engineered capable of? Answer: hard to explain if you haven't seen it. Basically, it extracts the minerals via beam light directly out of the rock. It has the ability to fill the rock to some degree. China was able to figure out how it works and make a similar version. The problem with the one they built is it only operates for a few seconds before it runs out of power. They still don't understand element 115. It also exploded one time and they had to remake it. Question: are the made to spec craft you described just the metal looking spheres observed and brought up in the latest Arrow hearings? Seem to be lots of orbs, discs, and tic tacs. Answer: yes, this is exactly why they always look so different. Things like triangles and hard edged squares don't exist, though. Pill shapes are extremely sought after, and some we think are, quote, freighters, end quote. The next, in continuation of the question, not a huge variety you'd expect from made to spec aircraft. Answer: the best analogy I can give for the variety spec comment is think of it like wrapping food in tinfoil on a plate. It's a bad analogy, but you get the idea. Usually, they will always be round or oval sometimes, even pill shaped. The tinfoil fits the intended function of covering everything without squishing it. Question: even stories of MJ-12 suspect the president didn't have a need to know. Answer: staff at our agency were usually older and had been there forever. This tracks when considering term limits. Um, Question: or statement, many abduction stories seem malevolent, meaning evil. Answer: previous post, I mentioned tools. I think the harm they cause is the same as cutting open a mouse to check the local population for signs of bad health in a population. Collateral damage. Question: do they just not like humans and like the planet? What's to stop them from just killing us all? Answer: they could absolutely destroy us if they wanted to. They have started launch sequences before that we suspect were tests on what they are dealing with. My personal view is they have to stay out of our way, but keep us from destroying ourselves. I imagine life elsewhere in the universe often destroys itself. Question: do you think we will get more answers from the government? Disclosure, as in them telling us aliens exist, or will the cover up continue? Answer: at one point, they briefed us about opening up information about the craft, but not the construction unit. Nothing happened for months. New leadership shows up suddenly, it's back to bullshit and secrets again. As to the USAF, they must have images and video of these things pretty close up. You'd think they would be the agency with the most knowledge of the subject. Answer: the USAF's goal is to fight other countries. They have footage, but it was mostly discovered and recorded by sheer chance. The Space Force, however, will be an entirely new thing. Their focus is similar to ours with a sprinkle of disinformation. Question: are all craft related to this factory and Grays? Answer: the ones we looked at, yes. Question: or are there more species coming here? Answer: possible, but I wasn't made aware. It wouldn't shock me. I've wondered if we are being protected from others. All right. Question: do we produce it or is it collected from other craft and just recycled? Because that seems to be the case. We tried to produce it and failed. We produce a shitty variant of it and use it for certain parts we build. Most of what we use for things that cannot be replaced is recycled. Our ability to rehash their shit has gotten better slowly. And apparently, they do set aside certain amounts for research, but most of it goes towards reuse. Question: is there tech that was gained from these craft that the military widely uses today, or civilians for that matter? Answer: a lot of your stealth aircraft sport smoother designs, for one. Learning to track them also helped with targeting software. Laser technology comes to mind since it's a crippled version of what they use. Most of what I saw was way above us. It's hard to put the hammers and how you see through them into words. It's not like a drone camera, and it's not a clear image to us at least. Question, can you clarify? Answer, they have a distinct fascination with radiation. Remember how I mentioned they don't go far from home base? When Fukushima happened, that was the nuclear disaster at Fukushima. When Fukushima happened, the construction facility deployed multiple UFOs to the location over multiple weeks. They were also very interested in Ebola at one point. We can't confirm abductions, but you get the idea that no one cared. That's interesting. That's interesting. All right, question. According to Elizondo, Italians seem to have a good grasp on the phenomenon, including that they originate somewhere from the Mediterranean. Is it possible that there is another UFO factory out there? Answer. Starting this thread and seeing everyone mention the Arctic has me wondering if there were others. It would make sense with other sightings, since, as mentioned previously, far from home is rare. Question. Does the moon hold anything of interest? Answer. Not that I'm aware of. We know that UFOs entering and exiting the atmosphere do not go towards any known planet often. Question. Are the flying orbs just scouts, research drones? Answer. Do you mean orbs in the sky? Or do you mean landed craft deploying them? I've mentioned previously that there are tools that are shaped like hammers. They emit extremely bright light and are used as a sort of drone or scout. They are able to view almost 360 degrees and detect everything from minerals to bio. If a human encounters them, they usually are deployed to keep watch and figure out when to wrap up and leave. Question. Do you think they interfere with our general science or investigations? Answer. Yes. They do not want to be studied. They also do not collect downed craft or occupants. It seems to be an oh fucking well approach. Element 115 is the exception. They don't seem to enjoy the idea of us toying with it. Question. Do they seem to learn when the craft get caught? Answer. Yes. There is an area they actively avoid in Mexico, among others. They also deploy more drones than piloted craft unless absolutely necessary. Question. Do they become harder to capture next time? Answer. Yes. Question. Is the technology they reproduce increasing rapidly or lags for years? Answer. I wouldn't say it's an increase in technology. It's more like adjustments, better understanding of how to operate. It's one reason we thought about 100 years for the first deployment of the construction facility. If we're here for years, we would have seen the majority of all adjustments made. Question. Is your department using AI to learn more about the findings you make around their tech? Answer. Not when I was around last. No. Taking a break for a bit, but we'll be back on later tonight. Question. Does the factory produce any signature, heat, electromagnetic? How do you track it? Answer. Both. We rely mostly on detecting the gravity it produces. It normally doesn't produce heat outright. When it does, we believe it's in the process of construction, since a small heat buildup can be detected when a craft returns or exits. We think this happens when it's being broken back down into parts or assembled. We can only detect these heat signatures when it's near the surface of the ocean, so sometimes a UFO will pop out on us. Question. How do you know about other countries' efforts? Answer. We don't obtain the information directly. It's passed along to us. My guess would be the typical way we get anything, such as spying, bribery. And why does the USAF not know about the other countries' efforts, but your department does? Answer. My department sits above the USAF for UFO recovery and information in the same way. The USAF sits above me on military planes for Ukraine. We were told at the time if we had to give away information only tell the public what the USAF knows. I'm pretty sure other countries know departments like mine exist. Question. Alternatively, do they know about U.S. efforts? Answer. Russia and China, yes. Others, it depends on the level of information. Some governments still don't know aliens even exist or aren't sure. Question. How do we know you aren't some FBI agent or other glowy? Answer. There's no way for me to prove that to you. You should always be asking, though. All I can say is pay attention to things as time progresses, and you'll be able to look back and see I was right. Question. The government does know about them, but only at the majestic level. Answer. I stated before, I'm not naming the department. The term majestic was considered outdated. Question. These symbols that you did see, do they remind you of any other symbols that you have seen on Earth? Answer. No, just what I mentioned. And then there's a question around the Eric Davis memo in which the OP asks him to link it. And then question, how many craft do we have at the moment? Answer, I don't know. I can tell you I've seen about 18 different models pass through for testing and research. Question, is Lockheed Martin involved in reverse engineering? Answer, they are a great company, aren't they? Question, can you describe some of the other tools found on wrecked craft? Answer, we have found things as simple as basic tools akin to tweezers to the lab. One that sticks out to me was an oval-shaped silver ball that would change colors based on how close it was to a source of energy. Another would be a sheet of metal that allowed you to view bones by placing it near someone's hands, etc. Question, can you describe any injuries or deaths that occurred involving alien craft? Answer, I've witnessed no deaths or injuries aside from corpses. I never got to see one we had with an abductee, but they weren't sure at the time if she died on impact. So that answer seems to allude to the possibility that there's been some abductions of citizens and they did not survive these abductions. All right. Question. We've been told that IEs use us for food. Answer, never found any food on board. Could be because they remove it before we arrive. Question. My question is, are they going to invade humanity en masse? Answer, I think wiping us out would be easy for them currently. No idea why they would wait. Question, what do you know about element 115? Answer, what I described above. Has its own field of gravity, but it is weak on its own. Question, is it really a stable isotope of the element with atomic number 115? Answer, yes. I'm no expert in that field, though we are given the basics. Question, how would you go about interacting with it? Answer, you can hold it. Removal is done very gently, though. Question, where is it typically found within downed craft? Answer, compartment near the engine, usually not far from the center of the craft. If the craft has a frame with a centerpiece, we have to extract it from an angle. This next question says, fake, how can an element be anti-gravity? It would fly to space and you couldn't find it. That's such a ridiculous question/statement. Again, Bob Lazar did a great demonstration on element 115, and I think we'll probably talk about it in the future again. I'm sure I'll be referring back to this, this post or whatnot. But he did a wonderful demonstration on how this element 115, again, is manufactured and how it creates almost like a heart-shaped gravity field around it, right? And let's see here. Gosh, has it been almost 2 hours that we've been going and going? let's just answer a few more of these, and then I'm going to disengage, and we'll continue this at a later time. Question: Are all models powered by element 115? Answer: Every model I've seen operates this way. I've always wanted to see inside the construction unit for this reason alone. And then there's questions around certain incidents that have happened, questions about direct contact of agents by these beings. And he or she answers, never heard of direct contact, started from their end. That doesn't mean we haven't, et cetera, et cetera. Question: You've mentioned that they get upset at the mention of war and conflict. Answer: Extremely upset if the threat is believable, like war with countries, etc. So we've communicated with them. How? How many times? Answer: Anytime the topic came up, there was no special mention of communication types, so I assume orally, but quite a few times. Question: What are they like? Answer: See the zookeeper comment above. It's hard to get them to respond to us in general. Question statement: You just described Atlantis. Answer: The U.S. didn't agree this was the case because they didn't have much faith pooled into one Greek and rare mentions. I think I'll stop here, folks. Still so much, and I'll stop here with this last question and answer. Question: Do you still believe in God? Answer: Absolutely not. Wow. So again, we had that very interesting 4chan post, but we also had that very interesting. Now that 4chan post was April of last year. That Reddit post was 4 days ago, and it has now been deleted. And again, I'm not surprised that it's been deleted by the original poster, not by Reddit, not by any moderators on the Reddit, on that specific Reddit board, but the actual OP removed the thread. And again, I'm not surprised by that. So, trying to come out and talk and things like that, it can be a very scary, situation for, many who have never had to navigate situations like that, right? So, very interesting, to say the least. But listen, guys, I appreciate each and every one of you for coming through. Shout out to the 50 of those of you watching on X. Shout out to those of you on Rumble. We even had like up to 10 people waiting before the live stream actually went live. So definitely starting to build up. Make sure you follow the Rumble page. This is the type of content I'm pretty much posting over there pretty regularly. And I try to, post content daily as much as possible. So make sure you subscribe and set your notification bell so that you don't miss a time when I go live. Again, I do appreciate each and every one of you for coming through. Before I get up out of here, allow me to pay a few bills if you don't mind. Shout out to the leakyou community. Please join us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music.
Please hit the like. Thank you.